there. Hello and welcome back, and sorry for the slightly informal introduction to today's video. That's kind of what this is gonna be. This is the Hilbert from Infplane, and it is another mini, but not really mini PC that's coming to market. Currently available on crowdfunding with the incredibly intimidating price of $3,199. This video is going to be about this. We're going to talk about some of its capabilities, some of the testing we've done on it, but it's not a review. It's about a broader subject than this. If you are interested in getting hold of this, the brand have sent it to me, and we have got a follow-up video on this in the works as well, for reasons that will become clear later in the video. But if you do want a deeper review on this, there is a great one from a channel called Robotech, and another one called X-Create, where they do some AI testing. I'm going to link to those below. But if you've stumbled on this video because of the Google or YouTube algorithm and you're looking for a review, I'm going to link to those below. Go to there now. This video is about this. The brand hasn't paid for this video, and again, they probably wouldn't have paid some of the stuff I'm going to say later in this video. But today I want to talk about what makes a good mini PC, or in this case, a compact PC. If you followed the channel for a while, you'll know I've been starting to change some of the hardware in my life because, notwithstanding I've had to be a lot more mobile, but also I've been trying to get a lot more compact. And on the channel, I've been looking at a lot more of these compact, less the word mini again, systems, such as this one from Minisforum. This is the Minisforum MSS1. Now, we're going to be coming back to that device later on because it is pertinent. Because returning to the Hilbert, this thing's hardware is kind of incredible for the scale. Now, it's got an AI chip from AMD, the one that a lot of us know about, that AI395 Plus. That combined with it arriving with pre-soldered 128 gig of DDR5 memory. That's 8,000 mega transfers DDR5 memory, means this, in 2026, is an expensive proposition. That combined with USB 4 connectivity, 2 ports, 10 gig connectivity, just one, and another 2.5 gig, and Wi-Fi 7 connectivity out the gate as well. This is a lot going on for a comparatively small package. It also has water cooling. It's got liquid cooling inside with a larger fan cooling system built into the top, something we'll explore now. Now, for the last few weeks between other projects, I've been sort of playing with this here in the background. The purpose for this device I was hoping for was going to be that this would replace a large part of my editing workflow, the videos that I make here for the channel. But it isn't just that. For the NAS Compares website, we do use a lot of image creation, not just for the photos we take, but also at the same time, some of the graphics, some of the banners, and I was looking to centralize it in the best way possible. Then I was going to leverage some AI benefits. I know not AI is for everyone, but having a system that me and Ed already sort of use, but wanted to scale it up, all of the assets we have at NAS Compares, that is, all of the videos, and alongside those videos, all of the transcripts ripped from those videos, all of the articles, all of the specifications of products, all of our sources, all of our online crawling, ultimately trying to create a digital version of me, of NAS Compares, of mine and Eddie's work and what we've created. And therefore, users can use that database to do a lot of their AI research. They will be able to use that database to find out more and compare a lot of the products we talk about. Now, the scale of this device is important because originally this was going to be that system that we were going to run it on. We were going to use the MSS1, and I'm still going to be utilizing this. This is a good system, and I'm sure these guys do not want a video where I say how good this system is in their video. However, it got hot. Even though it has a great cooling system, it wasn't good enough for the sheer density and work that we were going to be throwing at it. And that's what brings me back to this. Because even some of the earliest work I've been doing on this has been very positive. And a big part of that is that cooling system there at the top. We'll talk about noise and temps later on, but bringing that back into the fold, This device is essentially the same product as the MS-S1, but rather than try to cram all of that cooling for the CPU and all the other components inside into that smaller chassis, they've effectively outsourced the cooling to half of the chassis. Now, a number of you looking at that price tag of $3,199 and looking at the scale of this and the fact it doesn't have an actual graphics card, and we'll talk about the integrated graphics the 395 brings into the fold, a lot of you are gonna wonder why on earth you would not just buy a big PC. And there is an argument for that. Realistically, you can do quite a lot with a big old PC, and you've got a lot of space, a lot of channel cooling, all that water cooling you can get that's semi-bespoke. But lots of us don't want to have the big noisy tower. We want something compact. We're also starting to find that we're consolidating a lot of our tasks. And I know that does mean we're creating a quite negative points of failure situation sometimes, but having multiple nodes set up to get that job done can be beneficial, even if one of those nodes that you're duplicating across the board is doing the video editing, is doing the AI, is doing the presentation and production, because then they can all be working together within this eco. For the longest time, I've been editing and working on a desktop and a laptop, ultimately pairing and synchronizing them both with quite beefy specifications, but both of them commanding either a large-scale PCIe-led GPU card or a laptop's compact-style graphics card integrated inside. But that CPU inside there gives a lot. For example, I mean, again, notwithstanding the 16 core and let go down the road of threads and more and 5.1 gigahertz, I think, wherever it is. But that 4060 integrated graphics is, if not the best, then definitely up there, the best integrated graphics you can get right now. So funneling that into some of our graphical testing there, straight away, I mean, let's go Billy Basic. Let's talk about gaming there. Just went ahead and just tried Street Fighter 6 and Sons of the Forest, and we had both the game running at balanced settings there and then maxed out those settings. And in both occasions, this system barely broke a sweat, which is what I want to see. But I know you're thinking, I did not dissimilar test to that on this. You know, what justifies this if you can still go for this in the market? And by the way, these two are near enough identical prices. Well, this cooling system integrated into the top really came into its own when we did some of the heavier benchmarking. So for the first one, I went ahead and went into the CPU thread and CPU power sustained testing within 3D Mark. This basically pushed things up to max, and when we saw the benchmarks at the end, the Hilbert was more than 1,000 higher in terms of the ranked points there by the application than the Minisforum application. That trend continued with every single test. The Steel Nomad testing that I did for graphics, that came up with more than 500 points difference and the frames per second being higher. Then when we did specific integrated graphics testing, remember, the same CPU, the same integrated graphics, the same amount, 128 gig of DDR5, 8000 mega transfer memory there. When it came to the Night Raid integrated graphics test, the Hilbert was more than 2,000 points higher, and the frames per second more than 50 frames per second higher, the same test. This extended to PC Mark, that wonderful benchmark that tests, frankly, everything about PCs. And the Minisforum scored 8353, whereas the Infplane Hilbert scored 9,700. So again, an enormous jump up in terms of performance marks there. Basically, the Hilbert, that cooling system, yes, this commands a high price tag, but a lot of work has gone into that cooling. But let's talk about that price a little bit there, because with mini PCs, these days, with AI sucking the air out the room, we're starting to see a growing trend of these devices arriving with LPDDR4 and LPDDR5 memory, pre-attached, no SODIMM slots. And this doesn't buck that trend, it goes down that road. So we look at, once again, that price tag of $3,199. But what does 128 gig of 8000 DDR5 memory cost these days? Well, the answer's about $1,500 to $2,000. Now, you're right if you're thinking, what if I don't want 128 gig? I'm getting strong-armed to get a huge amount of memory. But we have to at least acknowledge that for this to arrive with 128 gig, at least $1,500 to, again, potentially $2,000 of that is just the RAM in the current climate there. Now, if you look at things like Framework and indeed CWWK and a few other MITx motherboard developers, you can see that the majority of them that are rocking out this chip and indeed Intel Ultra chips as well are all starting to arrive, even in DIY Mobo on its own form, with LP memory. The lowest they go is 64 gig, and even 64 gig will set you back somewhere around $1,000. So the price tag for this slowly starts to make sense when you look at the amount of memory that's included, the fact that it arrives with a 2 TB SSD inside, and again, we will talk about storage shortly. Ultimately, I get it, why this needs to be in the factory it is. But it is still larger than a Steam machine, that new Cube machine that's coming out soon. And the lack of a physical large-scale PCIe, even a smaller laptop style GPU card, is going to put some users off. And tapping on that point about storage, that 2 TB drive it arrived with, Gen 4x4, there is another M.2 slot inside that is Gen 5. And alongside that, you may see there at the bottom, there is a SATA connector located in there with a cage for 2.5 inch, but it does mean the occupation of a 3.5 inch drive if you choose. It runs in to power delivery. So it's a mini PC that at least manages to give the user the ability to install a larger scale SATA drive. Now, there isn't much space for 2 drives and there isn't a second connector either. Maybe a splitter could be arranged into there. But it is a compact PC that is facilitating a lot of different things inside. We still have a little bit more M.2 space for consideration, because a system like this, I'm pretty sure they could have rigged in maybe 4 Gen 4 or even Gen 3 ×1 slots inside, rather than give me 1 extra M.2. But I've got to applaud the compact nature and just how much storage this contains. The same goes for that 1U 400 watt PSU internally there. There isn't an external power brick, which can be incredibly annoying. This has been factored in here pretty darn well. But chances are you're not buying this just for the hardware. Some of you might be buying this because of software promises the brand has made. Now, we're bringing in the Minisforum MSS one again. However, it sort of represents every mini PC brand at the moment. Your GMK Techs, your Beelinks, all of them that are starting to rock out with a similar hardware to this. The reason I bring them up is they arrive at roughly the same price, but they arrive with just a bland copy of Windows 11 thrown on that I think the majority of users absolutely immediately bin off into the sun. Now, this Hilbert does arrive with a copy of Windows on board. However, it also arrives with a few tailored extras. And these tailored extras, frankly, they don't deliver at this time what I hoped they would. Now, again, this is why I'm saying this isn't a review, because we are attacking this thing in different ways right now. One of them being Unraid, more on that in a bit. It arrives with 2 core features built into the Windows experience. Now, again, at the beginning I mentioned Robotech. Please do check out his video because he goes into more detail about some of this. But in short, the 2 features it has is, one is an optimization tool called Clean, or Kleene, K-L-E-E-N-E. And the brand says that this allows this system to make a better utilization of the available GPU, CPU and RAM, with up to 20% improvements in performance. Now again, a big part of that, I imagine, is thanks to that cooling system allowing it to clock things up. Something that if you tried to do in a mini PC with the same hardware architecture, I would never recommend. However, although I do believe it does that, and I had it running in the background for a couple of the apps and services during the benchmarking, I will say it looks shoddy. I mean, I hate to use phrases like PlayStation 1 moody pirate games from the 90s that you buy at the market, but it really does look like a logo you use for a cracked key gen, and I really wish they weren't using that. Now, the second feature is AI based, and I wasn't able to use it. Couldn't put the phone number in, didn't seem to function for me. I'm not suggesting I don't think it will work eventually, or that right now it's maybe only limited to certain regions. But when I tried to use the Infplane research module for AI deployment stuff, I couldn't get it to function. I am talking to the brand, and that's why hopefully that will make it into the second video about this. But when I had this system up and running, I will say this, behind my UniFi switch, it pinged all over the place because of the copy of Windows that was in. Even English as a language module wasn't a default available. I spoke to the brand about it and they were directing me through it. But I'm so used to Windows just allowing me to change language out the gate. So I've never used a copy of Windows where I had to download English and then go through each of the individual modules before it allowed me to use it. I had to physically download the language module into that copy of Windows. And again, my UniFi switch from DNS pings and more wasn't liking it. However, when I started running Unraid on this, which of course we can run from the USB, and then had the system running like that, all of those pings went away. So I know a lot of the network fluff that was going on was to do with that copy of Windows. So it needs to have a much cleaner copy out the gate if they're going to roll this out with that software on board, that arguably improved or at least modified version of Windows to take advantage of this hardware in the way that they intend. Also, for those wondering whether this cooling system on this impacts things in terms of noise and power, I will at least include that in this video, which is, in terms of power utilization, I saw absolutely no difference compared to when I was utilizing the MS-S1, when both of them were at peak CPU, in other words, CPU and GPU, all threads and cores utilized in that 3D Mark test. The power utilization across both, as you can hopefully see on screen, was largely identical. But in noise, weirdly, for the bigger metal all around box, this really impressed me. And more than anything, that's what made me want to continue into a second video on this device, simply because when I had this thing guns blazing with the benchmarking tools happening, when I expected the fans, and that was the last test, by the way, I expected this thing and its fans to be going crazy. The decibels only went to 35 to 36 dBA, which was less than 10, it was around 10 decibels or more lower than the smaller Minisforum box. Because when that was at peak and the fans had to be ramped up, that was when it was at its noisiest because of that frame. But thanks to the cooling system on this, it got around it. However, I will say that cooling system does make some weird noises. Check them out. The bottom line is, this is a really well-built system, and there's a good chance I'm going to wrap a lot of my daily, weekly and monthly operations around this bad boy, but I still need to do further tests, at least for my own deployment. In terms of the price point and what's available in the market right now, I wish this wasn't on Kickstarter, because if it wasn't on Kickstarter, if I didn't have to add that caveat, $3,199 in the current marketplace for this hardware architecture for a 2TB, 128 gig, 395 plus AI chip system with water cooling, 10 gig and Wi-Fi 7 USB 4 is incredible. But we know that it's because of Kickstarter and the early backer price. There are still units available, but I wouldn't recommend it like I would traditional retail, because it's not a system that is available off the shelf with the traditional consumer protections. As long as you use the right credit cards, you use the right payment methods where reclaiming is possible, then this may not be a problem for you. But if this was the way it is right now, in terms of hardware pricing at traditional value, I would love it. but I don't think the software and the way it operates within that software as it is should have been on traditional retail. So it really is catch-22 there. I'm going to be running more tests. I'm going to be installing SteamOS, that version from the Steam Deck, on this, because I really want to see how that's going to run. I'm also going to be installing TrueNAS on it, because I'm going to be really interested to see just what the capabilities for clustering on this in terms of VMs and that great CPU, which we've already tested in the background for other stuff, are going to be. I'm going to put a link to the project below, but just know I don't get any commissions from that. We don't gain anything from that. This video is about evaluating this. Make that decision on your own back. But if you are looking for this hardware architecture right now in April, May 2026, this is the best value for that. Just know that it comes with a lot of caveats and it comes with them hanging on bits. And again, I recommend you check out the XCreate video centered around AI deployment. And again, that Robotech video there about some of his history on this, particularly with some of the malware scanning during some of that software. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I'll see you next time.